In swimming, there are four main forces that act upon your body. These are gravity, buoyancy, propulsion drag, and frontal drag. Now, in swimming, drag and friction, they're synonymous. So, the main goal of swimming, you want the most propulsion drag possible with the lowest amount of frontal drag. How do you decrease your frontal drag, you may be asking? Well, there's two main methods, which are shaving and the use of a tech suit. When you shave your legs and other parts of your body, this allows you to glide more easily through the water. And a tech suit is a hydrophobic suit, which means it resists water and is also extremely tight on your legs, which will once again let you glide better.
In swimming, you'll always go fastest when you're underwater and in the streamlined position. The streamlined position is when your arms are tucked behind your head like this and when your body is fully extended. This is because while you're underwater, it's only water that's pushing against you, and when you're swimming, it's air. This means that when you kick underwater, you'll propel yourself more due to the water that pushes back at you. This is due to Newton's third law, which is for every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. So the harder you kick, the harder you will propel yourself. Butterfly is the hardest stroke. When taking a stroke, your head is going to come downward, and it is optimal to have it be placed as low as possible because if your head rises too much, your hips sink, and you are able to gain the most power when your hips are placed higher. When your hips sink, it causes your legs to drag downwards, which sinks your body. But when you keep your hips and legs up, you are able to exert more force and move faster. Power is maximized when we displace the lowest amount of water possible. Butterfly has two phases, the catch, and when we push and pull the water down, you get to the recovery stage. This is where you can bring your arms back up for the catch. When taking the actual stroke, the arms of the swimmer should be placed relatively close to one another, parallel to the head of the swimmer. This allows for the lowest possible surface area, which lets you swim with a lower amount of drag. Since we all know that force is equal to mass times acceleration, and the mass of a swimmer will always remain constant, as you put greater force into your repeated butterfly stroke, you will also accelerate more, since the greater force divided by the same mass will yield a greater acceleration. The angle of your bicep flex relative to your wrist should be about 40 degrees,
or 2 pi over 9 radians.
This allows for your body to swing your arms the fastest, generating the most propulsion. When your torso is kicked and lifted to be placed above the surface in butterfly swimming, you create a transfer from kinetic energy to potential energy, and then back to kinetic energy due to gravity. Alright, next up we have the backstroke, aka Mr. Passick's favorite stroke. Backstroke is a long axis stroke. A long axis stroke is where the central movement is based on the rotation from the core and hips while maintaining a straight line along your head, spine, and legs. As you're swimming, your body is rotating along an axis from side to side. A common mistake that beginning swimmers make is not rotating, but the rotation is key when you want to be able to get a better position to pull water. When swimming, it's important to keep your head straight parallel to the water. When you raise your head, your feet begin to sink. This creates a ton of drag. Try and map this out. When your body is straight like this, all the water can easily just rush under you. But when you're more like this, the water is like pushing against your body. So that ton of drag. When you're rotating, you want your head to constantly be straight. You don't want to be moving side to side, sort of like a zigzag. Not only does this create a ton of drag, but it's also dangerous, for it could cause you to steer off course and, hit one of the side rails or something. Another part of backstroke that gets commonly overlooked is the kick. Your legs generate a force when you are alternately kicking your legs, which increases your speed. In order to create the most propulsion, you want your legs to be angled on the way up, and you want them to kick straight on the way down. Another part is your arms, more specifically your fingers. You want your fingers to be about 10 degrees apart so you can catch the most water.
To optimize breaststroke swimming, you're going to want to lift your back and arm muscles upwards, high above the water, and allow your muscles to tighten up. This is going to create gravitational potential energy. When you push your upper body forward and you take the actual stroke by using your core, your gravitational potential energy that you created gets transferred to your legs, and then when you kick forward with a breaststroke kick and push forward with the actual stroke, this turns into kinetic energy. When you're doing breaststroke and you glide, you're giving yourself momentum, which you need to maintain throughout a race to go as fast as possible. Depending on the length of your arms and your overall stroke rate is going to determine how long the glide phase should be in your breaststroke stroke. For each person, it's going to be different. If it's too short or if it's too fast, you're not going to be able to get the perfect amount of glide and you're going to end up going slower throughout a race. When you're swimming breaststroke, most of your body is going to be in a straight line position, while your horizontal generation of force is coming from the forearms and the hands, because those are actually like moving to the sides. The variation of velocity is very high in breaststroke, and this is because as you continue to swim breaststroke more and more, since you have to put so much force into every stroke in both your arms and legs, you slow down a lot, so the average mean velocity for breaststroke is much slower when compared to other strokes. As mentioned before, the stroke rate in breaststroke plays a very important role in how fast you're going to be able to go. And this, along with the timing of the glide, is going to impact your overall speed and times when you're doing a race. As the distance of a race increases, per se, from 50 yards to 100 yards to a 200-yard breaststroke, your rate at which you take your strokes and kicks are going to decrease because, as mentioned previously, as you do more and more, you get more tired. So for a race as long as a 200-meter breaststroke or a 200-yard breaststroke, depending on if you're in yards or meters, you're going to have to go at a much slower rate than a 50-meter breaststroke or a 50-yard breaststroke to keep up a good speed. In terms of the physics behind freestyle swimming, it is very similar to that of backstroke swimming due to both freestyle and backstroke being long axis strokes. The only main difference being is that when you swim freestyle, you swim on your stomach, and when you swim backstroke, you swim on your back. So, to avoid repeating the same points here, we analyze this diagram that you see above. By taking this quick look at the diagram, we see that the path of motion that a swimmer goes through changes as the stroke goes out a full cycle. We also see the different components of forces, which are the lift and drag forces. We previously mentioned these, such as the resultant, which comes based off the 90-degree angle that is formed from the lift force and the drag force. We know that the amount of lift and drag forces ends up being proportional to the square of the velocity of whatever object is in motion. To apply that to a person swimming freestyle, we see that whichever part of your arm moves the fastest throughout the water is also going to be the same part of the arm that is experiencing the greatest amount of lift and drag forces. To put this into perspective, while you are swimming, a part of your arm, such as the forearm, is going to experience close to no lift force due to its cylinder-based shape, while a part of your arm, such as the hand, will experience much more lift force as it is tilted through the water. As you wait on the diving block and you prepare yourself to do a dive and get ready for a race, your body gets filled with both gravitational potential energy and chemical potential energy. First, we'll take a look at the gravitational potential energy. This is the energy that exists since you are upwards. Compared to the water, which is down here, you are placed higher, you are located at a higher gravity. While you're located on the block and you're tensing up, ready to dive, your gravitational potential energy is matched. As soon as you leap forward and dive into the block, this gravitational potential energy gets converted into kinetic energy. Now, let's take a look at the chemical potential energy. This is the energy that gets stored in your muscles, such as your back and leg, as you're stretching them while you're taking off on the block and you're preparing yourself to launch. Once you launch off the block, all this chemical potential energy that's stored in your back and leg muscles is going to get converted into kinetic energy when you actually fall down into the block. So you're using this energy to go faster. The more you build up on the actual dive, the faster you're going to go, since we know that energy is always conserved. And when you dive into the water, it creates momentum, which gets calculated as your mass multiplied by your speed. So somebody that's going to have the most momentum is going to be a heavy person that is able to generate a large amount of speed. Before a swimmer gets ready to dive off a block, while they're not even on the block, swimmers tend to stretch their muscles, which allows for them to have a greater moment of inertia. A greater moment of inertia will make it so the surface area of your collision between you and the water is going to be lower. So that means there's going to be less of a splash made, which we all know a splash is going to create drag and allow you to go slower. So by stretching before, you're able to avoid all this time that you would have lost. When you dive into the water, you're going to want to break the surface with the tip of your fingers like so, because it's going to create a hole where you can dive through where the water is broken. Because if you just dive straight onto the water, kind of like a belly flop, you're going to have a ton of drag and friction that's going to slow you down. But by creating this hole when you dive in and just attempting for the rest of your body to get through the same hole, you're going to go much faster.
Just like life, in swimming eventually you're going to hit a wall. But instead of facing it head on, you're going to avoid it and barely touch it. In a flip turn, you push your body towards the wall and place yourself in a somersault position. You'll keep your legs tucked and then push off the wall. Flip turns are the quickest method to turn around and could mean the difference between first and second place. Flip turns follow the formula L equals RmV. L is the angular motion and it will always stay the same number throughout the equation. R is the radius stretching from the axis of rotation, M is your mass, and V is velocity. Since mass is constant, when you increase the radius, the velocity decreases and vice versa. To try and demonstrate this with the chair, when I keep my arms out like this, my radius is increased, and when I bring it like this. But since our final value should always be the same, my velocity should increase as my radius decreases. So